Hello and welcome to our conversation about taking steps to improve equity, diversity, and inclusion in our places of work and our communities. It's brought to you by the Greater Parkland Regional Chamber of Commerce and Town of Stony Plain Family and Community Support Services. Recently, we've heard lots of discussion raised about how to get leaders buy-in towards building ED&I programs. The conversation takes place between myself, Mike, Renata, and Ada of BadaB Consulting. At the end, we'll also take a moment to tell you about our recognition badges that help you take steps and demonstrate your commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. Now, let's get talking.
Renata and Mike, you both come with years of working experience in achieving equity, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace. So based on your experience, what are some of the, let's say, biggest challenges that organizations face in achieving inclusion?
When I wear my other hat, I work with a team to support people with barriers to find meaningful employment. Many times, the biggest reason that employers are resistant to hiring people with barriers is because they think it's going to be time consuming, it's going to be a lot more work and resources for their organization, especially given the economic situation and the global pandemic. I totally understand that many employers are struggling, so having an inclusive workforce is a lower priority for some right now.
And in my teaching and research experience, I found that the top leaders of an organization play the biggest role in shaping the organization's acceptance of diversity and their commitment towards inclusion.
I totally agree. Leaders play the most important factor in shaping an organization's future. However, leaders are just like us. They're human beings, they run organizations, and they face challenges. I don't blame them when some of them push DE&I as a low priority item. Well, for today's conversation, shall we share some simple takeaways of getting those leaders buy-in to commit to ED&I initiatives in the workplace?
Ada, you have experiences presenting to senior leaders, I know. You mentioned to me that it's not always easy. What are some of your tips to get leaders' attention?
No, it's not very easy, Renata, but these experiences taught me a good way of thinking. Before I approach any senior leaders with ideas, I would ask myself 3 questions. If I can come up with answers to these 3 questions, then I think I have a solid business case. So the first question is, why do we want to start with this new initiative at our organization? What would happen if we don't do it? So in the short form of it, it's really about understanding the purpose of doing something before taking action. Question number 2 I would ask myself is, how does what we want to do align with the business direction? In other words, how does this initiative I propose align with this organization's vision, mission, values, and ultimate the strategic plan? Organizations today face tighter than ever resource constraints. Business leaders have to prioritize different initiatives. So if what we want to achieve deviate from those business plans, then of course it would not be a high priority item. The third question I ask myself is, and is probably one of the most critical questions, is about cost or budget. Common questions that leaders would ask you is, how much will this initiative cost? Do we have a budget for it? If not, then where can we come up with money to cover it? What's my return on investment? I know there's a lot of questions, but let's break down the questions down a bit. And Renata, can you give us some examples of the purpose of ED&I practices for businesses?
Of course. In my opinion, taking actions towards an inclusion in the workplace serves several significant purposes. So first of all, organizations thrive because of the talent they have, obviously. In Canada, our workplace is diverse, as we know. We see 5 generations in the workplace from all walks of life and qualifications. Taking action towards inclusion means that the business wants to include people in the decision-making process. They care about people's voice. They want to build a culture of respect, and they understand that being inclusive means to integrate the strengths of their talents at all levels. Famous researcher that we've all heard of, Brené Brown, says we need to do more than diversity and equity and inclusion. We need to create real belonging in our culture. What do you think, Mike?
Oh, definitely. Renata, what you just shared is about building a positive culture internally. And externally, customers that businesses serve these days are also becoming more diverse. In order to better understand and serve the needs of the customers, the employee base needs to reflect the customer base. By enhancing the inclusive actions both internally and externally, organizations build a favorable image and reputation, and that gives them a competitive advantage over their customers.
Thank you for sharing those insights. I would also add that more and more organizations these days are aligning their ED&I strategies with their talent strategy and the overall business strategy. Let me give you an example. I know that a lot of us use Apple products. Apple's business strategy is to focus on its unique design and functionality, although charging a premium price. In order to build creative and thoughtful designs, Apple employs people who are talented, committed, and who are independent and creative thinkers. The company believes that an inclusive and diverse workforce drives innovation and makes the company stronger. Apple is known for hiring diverse talent for jobs at all levels, attracting candidates from all over the world, leveraging technology to prevent biases. That's why it has been able to attract a talent workforce that have contributed to its continued success and growth. We often hear that diverse organizations have proven to produce better business results. Mike, you are the expert on research. What are some of the best ED&I return on investment indicators that businesses can use to convince their leaders?
Absolutely. Equity, diversity, and inclusion shows up at 3 levels of management analysis: at the individual level, at the group level, and at the organization level. And that organization might be a company or not-for-profit, an association, a government entity. There's lots of options there. And with lots of variation in how to slice and dice their results and findings in order to show the effects and contributions of diversity and inclusion, we can go down this path in many different ways. But to my mind, there's a few hard to argue points that we can focus on. So for example, at the individual level, looking at employee engagement or productivity. At the group level, constructive team behaviors or the absence of those behaviors. Looking at the workforce, their turnover or retention in the organization. And even at the market, looking at customer experience. Now, regarding some statistics or some perspectives on this, a few studies to talk about are, for example, from Deloitte. They found that diverse companies enjoy 2.3 times higher cash flow per employee in strongly diverse organizations. Gartner found that inclusive teams improve team performance by up to 30%, particularly in high diversity environments. And a BCG study showed that companies with diverse management teams had a 19% increase in revenue compared to their less diverse counterparts. Now, there are many other great measures and indicators that we can consider. I provided these because they get at the heart of ED&I, which is employees being entered into the organization, being empowered, and expected to fully participate in a vibrant and varied workplace. And I believe that these indicators directly show the payoff for investing in better ED&I actions.
Thanks, Mike. Another great conversation. There's 2 simple things that you can do right now to get started. Action number 1, understand where your organization is at with their ED&I initiatives. There is a long maturity level or curve each organization is at a different point. Recognize where you're at today and what steps make sense for your organization. Most importantly, take your first step. Action number 2, observe your workplace, gather feedback, and make suggestions of how your organization can move forward to become more inclusive. It all starts now, so start taking action today.
That was a pretty good conversation. As we wrap up this session, I'd like to take just a minute to let you know that we offer a badge recognition program that is focused on supporting organizations in the early stages of action on equity, diversity, and inclusion. There are 6 badges available: leadership and capacity, accessibility, staffing, compensation, performance excellence, and learning. For each, we have a list of research-based practical indicators, and you tell us how your organization is fulfilling several of them. Then we have a confirmation meeting and award the badge. There's lots of flexibility built in, and the point is to inform and recognize your first steps on the journey of meaningful equity, diversity, and inclusion. Contact information for Ada, Renata, and myself are on screen. Please reach out to any of us or the corporate office to talk more about equity, diversity, and inclusion and how we can help you. And thanks to our partners, the Greater Parkland Regional Chamber of Commerce and the Town of Stony Plain Family and Community Support Services, who are advocates of equity, diversity, and inclusion.